Do you ever feel trapped in your own life? It's like you have no control over the decisions that are being made for you? Well, if so, I have some good news for you. Turns out that you're not alone. Now, there are other people in the world who have been in your exact position, and they've managed to break free. In this episode, I want to introduce you to one of those people. Her name was Mary Ann Cotton, and she was a serial killer. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but let me tell you her story, and you can be the judge. Mary Ann was born in 1832 in a small village in England. She grew up poor and had little education, but despite these challenges, she managed to find a husband and have several children. However, her life was not without its problems. Her first husband died when she was pregnant with their child, leaving her a widow with 2 young children to support. Determined to make a better life for herself and her children, Mary Ann moved to a big city and began working as a domestic servant in wealthy households. It was here that she met her second husband, a factory worker. They got married and had several children together. But as you might have guessed, life was still not easy for them. They lived in a small, dirty house and often struggled to put food on the table. That's when Mary Ann began to take drastic measures. She started poisoning her employers and their children, killing them and collecting on their life insurance policies. She would use small amounts of arsenic, which were not easily detected in autopsies at the time. Over the course of several years, she is believed to have killed at least 21 people, including several of her own children.
Ow.
When asked why she did it, Mary Ann said that she was tired of living in poverty and wanted a better life for herself and her children. She also claimed that she was innocent and had been framed by the police because they could unfind the real killer. But the evidence against her was overwhelming, and she was convicted of murder. She was sentenced to death by hanging and spent her final days in prison planning her escape. On the day of her execution, she refused to say a prayer and told the chaplain that she had never been a good Christian. As the noose was placed around her neck, she said, "Is this the end?" Then everything went black. So what can we learn from Mary Ann Cotton's story? Well, for one thing, we can see that poverty and desperation can drive people to do terrible things. But we can also see that no matter how difficult our circumstances may seem, there is always hope for a better future. Mary Ann could have chosen to end her life and the lives of her children, but instead, she chose to fight for a better life. She took matters into her own hands and created the life she wanted for herself and her children. And that's why I'm so grateful that I live in a time when there are so many opportunities available to me. I don't have to resort to desperate measures to get ahead in life. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video and subscribe for more historical tales. You wake before the sun. It's not to an alarm, but to the slow cough of your neighbor behind the wall. Damp, deep, and tired. It's the kind of cough you've learned not to think too hard about. The room is dark. The only light comes from a weak streak across the floor, leaking in through a warped wooden shutter. You pull your blanket tighter, though blanket is a generous word. It's more of a worn cloth, shared between 2 or 3 of you. The air is heavy. It's not with warmth, but with smoke and coal dust, and the musty scent of damp wool. The walls are stained with soot, the ceiling sags. Your feet hit the floor, cold, splintered, wet in one corner, where yesterday's rain leaked through the roof. You don't have shoes. If you're a child, your job might be to climb a chimney today. You are small enough to fit where others can't. You tie a rag over your mouth. It helps, but not much. The soot gets in your nose, in your eyes, in your lungs. If you're a woman, you might spend the day bent over a sewing table, stitching seams for 12 hours straight, paid by the piece. If you're a man, maybe you haul coal or break stone or sweep the roads for coppers. You walk to work, past alleys cluttered with chamber pots, cracked windows, and rusted water pumps. You step over puddles of what you try not to guess. Rats scatter at your feet. You are used to them. You even know a few by shape. You pass a child sitting on a step, barefoot. His lips are blue from the cold, but he's blowing on a piece of bread like it's a feast. You nod. He nods back. At the pump, a queue has already formed, a woman yells. Someone tried to cut in line. Someone else says the water smells of iron. No one is surprised. Back inside, the day rolls forward. Your walls are thin. You hear the neighbors fight. You hear someone crying. You hear a baby wailing. Not with newborn hunger, but with something deeper. A weariness you don't name. At midday, you eat if you can. A crust of bread. A potato, perhaps. Tea. If someone saved a bit of coal, you chew slowly, not to enjoy it, but to make it last. The smell of the city shifts as the sun climbs. Smoke, waste, sweat, ash. You return from work with a film of grime on your skin. You scratch. Your sleeves are dotted with lice bites. You pick at a sore. It doesn't seem to heal, but you don't complain. There is no time for complaint. The room grows colder as evening falls. A single candle flickers. You blow on your hands. You lie back down on the sagging mattress, pulling your coat over your chest. Someone beside you whispers a story, half remembered, half finished, and then the coughing starts again. You close your eyes. You try to sleep. This was the rhythm for millions. Not tragic, not heroic. Just lived. Quietly, completely. And now, from this silence, we meet a woman who lived in the margins of these same streets. A mother. A wife. And something else entirely. Before we leave the 19th century behind, let's turn our attention to one more thing. How did people deal with mental illness? Back then, there was no such thing as therapy. Doctors believed that insanity was caused by an imbalance of the humors, and the only cure was rest. Lots of rest. And where better to rest than in a lunatic asylum? These institutions were supposed to be places of healing, but they were more like prisons. Patients were locked up for life, sometimes without ever seeing a doctor. They wore shackles and straitjackets, were given electroshock treatments and lobotomies, and if they were lucky, they might be allowed to walk around the asylum grounds, which were designed to keep them from escaping. But some patients did escape, and when they did, the public went wild. Escaped lunatic. God, can you imagine anything more terrifying? Now, let the noise of the slums fall away. The coughing, the shouting, the clang of coal scuttles. All quiet now. In its place, the distant hum of wind behind stone walls. A corridor of cool tile, a heavy wooden door, and silence, thick and padded. You have entered a Victorian asylum. This is not a place of screams or chains. Not tonight. Tonight, we explore it as it truly was. Routine-driven, regulated, and shaped more by confusion than cruelty. The building is large, often beautiful, set in the countryside, designed with symmetry, gardens, and light, because doctors believe that order could heal disorder. The grounds are manicured, the windows are tall, but inside, the rhythm is very different. Imagine yourself walking the halls as an attendant. Your shoes echo on the tiles. You carry a small ring of keys. Your task is not punishment. It is maintenance, of schedule, of quiet, safety. Most of the patients, men and women, are not dangerous. Many are poor. Some are simply unwanted. Widows with grief that lasted too long. Young men who talk to themselves. Mothers after childbirth who never seemed quite the same. And for some, there was never a clear reason. The diagnoses are strange to our ears. Melancholia, moral insanity, hysteria, religious mania. Some patients are here for hearing voices, others for refusing to eat. Others for simply being too sad, too slow, too loud, too inconvenient. Their treatment, routines. Mornings begin early.
Ow.
Beds made, faces washed, hair combed. Breakfast is porridge or tea.
Ow.
Then work. If they are able, laundry, gardening, sewing, writing. If not, there is sitting, rocking, gazing out windows. Therapies vary. Some are kind, talking, walking in gardens, reading scripture. Others less so. Cold baths, bleeding. The occasional use of restraints, but rarely as punishment. Mostly as procedure. You might find a man pacing in circles, murmuring a prayer. A woman folding the same cloth again and again. She might find silence. Not peaceful, but empty. The walls here are thick, not just of brick, but of misunderstanding. And yet, many recover. Some leave, some do not. Some become so used to the rhythms that the outside world would feel like chaos. The doctors are curious, earnest, even. But medicine is young. Psychology, younger still. The mind, in this era, is a vast and shadowy chamber. Most simply try to light a candle, and hope it stays burning. Now, the lamps in the corridor begin to dim. The patients are tucked in, the doors are locked, and the city once again recedes behind layers of cotton, stone, and sleep. But above all of this, above the soot, above the whispers, the upper classes continue on, with polished silver, with oyster forks, with rules so rigid they seem carved in bone. Let the fog lift. Step through a heavy oak door into the warmth of gaslight, polished wood, and soft conversation. Outside, the city coughs beneath a blanket of coal smoke. But here, the fire crackles in the hearth, and everything is ordered. You are now a guest, or perhaps a servant, at a Victorian dinner party. The household is middle to upper class, respectable, ambitious. The family's fortune comes from shipping or banking or some distant colonial venture. You won't ask too many questions. The drawing room is arranged just so. The clock ticks softly. The upholstery is stiff, the wallpaper thick with florals, and maid enters silently with a tray of sherry. The guests arrive in layers, crinoline, waistcoats, brooches pinned precisely. The women wear corsets, pulled tight, breath shallow. The men bear polished boots and mustaches curled like punctuation marks. All of it is posture, quiet performance. Dinner is announced by a bell. You walk slowly, as etiquette demands, into the dining room. The table is long, polished, glinting with crystal and candlelight. Silverware is abundant. Forks for fish, knives for roast, spoons for soup. You must remember which is which. Conversation is safe. Weather, empire, opera. No one speaks of the smoke outside, or the laundress with red hands, or the child who froze last week 2 streets away. The first course. Oysters. Delicately arranged, chilled on porcelain. Then comes soup. Thick, creamy. Then meat. Lamb, likely, or duck. Wine is poured carefully by footmen who do not speak. There is ritual in every movement. Ladies dab their lips, not their mouths. Men do not speak across the table. Eye contact is brief. Laughter contained. If you are a guest, you smile often. You compliment the food. You say nothing of the aching corset or the blisters in your borrowed shoes. If you are a servant, you move silently, invisibly, clearing plates, refreshing glasses, never meeting a gaze unless spoken to. Shh. You sleep below stairs, in rooms with low ceilings and iron beds. But up here, your presence must not disturb the flow. Dessert arrives. Cheese, fruit, pastries, layered with almond and spice. Then brandy, then coffee. The ladies withdraw to the drawing room. The men remain. Cigar smoke coils in the air. Finally, you leave. The air outside hits cold and sharp. The sound of hooves echoes down the street. The lamps flicker, casting long shadows over cobbles and ash. Inside, the table is cleared. The candles snuffed, and the rhythm continues. Now, let the flicker of candlelight fade. Dinner party has ended. The dishes are cleared. The gowns and gloves have been stored away. Outside, the city waits, thick with smoke. And something else. It is summer, 1858, and the Thames has turned. The river that winds through London, source of trade, transport, and water, now flows dark and sluggish. Its surface is broken by rotting matter, animal carcasses, human waste, industrial runoff. All of it, simmering under the heat of a relentless July sun. You cannot escape the smell. Imagine stepping outside and gagging. Sharp, sour, almost chemical stench rising in waves. Curtains are soaked in vinegar. Lemon is stuffed into nostrils. Sheets are hung over windows, dampened with perfume. Even Parliament, usually above such discomfort, cannot continue. Inside the grand halls of Westminster, members hold handkerchiefs to their faces. Debates are shortened. Tempers rise. The stench of the river seeps through stone. For decades, London had poured its waste into the Thames, believing the river would carry it away. But with a growing population, new flushing toilets, and no modern sewage system, the river has become a sewer. Newspapers call it the Great Stink. But out of this rot comes a turning point. A man named Joseph Bazalgette, an engineer with a gift for detail and patience, is finally given the approval and funding he's begged for. His task? To build a modern sewer system beneath the city's feet. Miles of underground tunnels, brickwork laid with precision, gravity, flow, containment, all calculated, It is a project of extraordinary scale, quietly heroic. The kind of labor that changes everything, but leaves no monuments. In time, the smell fades. The river clears. Not entirely, but enough. Death rates from cholera drop. The city breathes easier. The great stink is forgotten by many. But not by the engineers. Not by the families who lived near the banks. Not by the generations who no longer had to fear their own water. Sometimes it takes unbearable discomfort to force true change. Now, with the river flowing on into the dusk, we turn toward a quieter revolution, one that didn't shape sewers but machines. Now, let the foul air of the slums drift away. We are stepping into a different kind of chamber, not of grime, but of ideas. The walls here are lined with books. The scent is of ink and oil. The ticking of a clock harmonizes with the hiss of a gas lamp. A pencil scratches gently across a page. Welcome to the study of Charles Babbage, a gentleman, a thinker, a mathematician with a mind too wide for the world he lived in. Imagine him at his desk, surrounded by blueprints and gears, brass pieces, levers, diagrams of a machine that doesn't quite exist. Not yet. He calls it the analytical engine. A machine designed not to calculate a single answer, but to process instructions, to carry out commands. In essence, the first concept of a computer. But Babbage is not alone. There's a visitor to his study. A woman, poised and brilliant. Ada Lovelace, daughter of the poet Lord Byron, but far more enchanted by logic than lyric. Ada sees what others do not. Where Babbage envisions numbers, she imagines potential. A machine not just for math, but for music, for language, for anything that can be symbolized. She writes the world's first algorithm years before any machine could run it. Together, they exchange ideas, letters, notebooks. She writes of a machine that could one day compose symphonies. He dreams of metal mines powered by steam, and yet their work goes unfinished. The government grows impatient. Funding is pulled. The machines remain incomplete, scattered in boxes, forgotten in drawers. But the ideas never vanish. Decades, even a century later, engineers and scientists will look back. They will read Ada's notes. They will trace the lines of Babbage's gears. And they will understand. Sometimes progress is not a parade. It is a whisper, unheard in its own time. Let us leave their study now. Quiet, glowing with gaslight, the gears stilled, the books closed, but the future still humming just beneath the silence. Next, we descend once more into darker streets, not into filth or fever, but into fog, into a mystery that still haunts history's edges. Now, let us step into the mist. It's late. The lamps glow dim behind layers of fog. The cobblestones gleam with dampness. A carriage rolls by slowly. Hooves echo in alleys. The city holds its breath. You are in Whitechapel, East London. The year is 1888. This is not the polished London of parlors and parlance. It is a place of transients, boarding houses and broken boots, of shadows stretched thin and long by gaslight. And in this quiet tension, a name begins to whisper. Jack the Ripper. We do not speak of gore tonight. We do not revel in blood. Instead, we dwell in the uncertainty, the lingering fear, the unanswered questions, the slow dread that crawled through Whitechapel like a winter fog. Women were found dead. 5, officially. All poor, all vulnerable, all living on the margins. Their names deserve remembrance. Marianne Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Edos, Mary Jane Kelly. Their lives were not glamorous. Most slept in common lodging houses. They worked when they could. They walked the streets for survival. And their stories before their end were quiet, ordinary. It's often overlooked. Then came the letters, scrawled in red ink, addressed to newspapers and the police. Signed Jack the Ripper. Some were hoaxes. Others perhaps not. The spelling erratic, the tone playful, chilling. The police were baffled. Maps were drawn. Suspects questioned. The public speculated. Whispers filled parlors and pubs alike. The East End became a spectacle, even a destination. Journalists wandered the streets. So did gawkers. And through it all, no one was caught. The identity of the killer remains unknown. Theories abound. Doctors, butchers, nobles, foreigners, all accused, none confirmed. But the greater horror was this: life moved on. After the fifth victim, the killings stopped. The fog rolled in again. Whitechapel, with its hunger and hardship, kept breathing, quietly, enduringly. And so we do not dwell on the killer, but on the climate, the fear, the silence that fell over certain streets after nightfall. Sometimes history doesn't leave answers, only echoes. Let us return now to something quieter, a table, a teacup, domestic scene, where order ruled. But still, not all was well. Now, the fog thins once more. The street is quiet, the front door opens with a soft creak. You step inside a modest but respectable Victorian middle-class home. Not a manor, not a tenement, but something in between. A world of routines, respectability, and quiet tension. You are greeted not by noise, but by structure. The hallway is narrow, the umbrellas stand polished, clock ticks steadily. Somewhere upstairs, a servant stokes a bedroom fire. Downstairs, a kettle hisses gently on the range. The house smells of starch and soap. Not fresh exactly, but clean in the way of boiled linen and lavender-scented polish. You might be the wife of a clerk, or the daughter of a doctor, or a maid, rising before dawn to lay out boots and shave soap. In this world, everything has its place. Breakfast is simple: porridge, toast, tea. The man of the house reads the paper. Children sit straight-backed, silent unless spoken to. You do not slouch. You do not speak of unpleasant things. The parlor is for callers. The kitchen for servants. The drawing room for music or needlework. You move between these rooms like a shadow. Graceful, quiet, contained. Afternoon brings tea. The table is set, a linen cloth, freshly pressed. China cups. Jam tarts. Cucumber sandwiches. Sugar cubes placed carefully with silver tongs. It seems peaceful, but beneath the stillness, there is pressure. The corset tightens more than just the waist. Expectations tighten too. Women are judged not only by how they pour tea, but by how well they host, how quietly they endure, how successfully they maintain the illusion. Children are expected to obey. Boys are sent to school, strict and silent. Girls learn music, French, and embroidery. Few speak of feelings. Most know their futures are arranged. Even the servants, who move quietly and sleep too to a narrow bed in the attic, are expected to smile and disappear. And yet, rebellion exists here, in quiet ways. A daughter who writes by candlelight. A cook who adds spice against instructions. A woman who dares to read a novel not meant for her. Parlor, for all its polish, cannot silence the world outside. The fog still drifts past the windows. The poor still shuffle down the alley behind the garden wall. And beyond the safety of this home, 1,000 others live different rhythms. Harder, but sometimes freer. As the day fades, candles are lit. A hymn is played softly on the piano. Someone sighs. Someone stirs the fire. Someone else simply stares at the teacup in her hands. Not all cages are built from iron. Some are made from lace. And now, the gas lights have dimmed. The tea has gone cold in its cup. The fog coils once more around quiet doorways. The river flows on, darker, cleaner now. And the city, so full of voices and soot and rhythm, slowly exhales. You've walked the cramped lanes of the slum, felt the hunger, and heard the hush of neighbors coughing through thin walls. You've met a woman whose silence hid something chilling. You've wandered through the padded halls of asylums, and stepped lightly over parlors where etiquette smothered expression. You've held your breath during the summer of the Great Stink, and seen sparks of the future ignite behind closed doors. Victorian London was many things: cruel, inventive, rigid, brilliant, suffocating, live. And now, as you return from that world, let its echo fade into stillness. Let the ticking clocks grow quiet. Let the soot fall away. The city remains behind you, tucked into shadows, waiting gently for another night. You are safe now. You are still. Sleep is very near. Good night.